upcoming session will dive into the art of storytelling that transcends its origins, exploring the themes, techniques, and emotional depth that enable films to connect with audiences worldwide. Our esteemed panel will share insights into how their stories break barriers of language, culture, and borders, accomplishing meaningful connections and leaving a lasting impact across the globe. To conduct this session, please join us and welcome with a big applause a pioneering producer who has brought some of India's most iconic as well as diverse films to life and left an indelible mark on global cinema, Mr. Bobby Bedi. And now, on to our panel of speakers. First up, an acclaimed filmmaker renowned for her visually stunning documentaries and ability to tell deeply human stories. Please keep the applause going for the Academy Award nominated Miss Lucy Walker. Up next, an actor, producer, and social activist whose outreach programs have been focused on bringing people together, Miss Vani Tripathi Tiku. And now, a versatile actress and filmmaker acclaimed for her powerful performances and fearless exploration of complex narratives, Ms. Tanishta Chatterjee. Our next panelist is a producer and filmmaker with a deep passion for storytelling that bridges generations and cultures, Ms. Anna Saura. Finally, a writer, filmmaker, and storyteller whose work has traversed genres and geographies, connecting audiences with his unique narrative voice. Please welcome Mr. Farooq Dondi. May I now request D. Ramakrishnan, General Manager, National Film Development Corporation, Ministry of Information and Broadcasting, to please join us on stage to felicitate our celebrated speakers. Thank you, sir, for joining us with the felicitation. And now, over to Mr. Bobby Bedi with a gracious request to commence the discussion.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome. So, first, just to set one interesting thought in everyone's mind. Indians and India is a very, very lucky country for various reasons. One, that we are 1.4 billion people. Two, we have a huge film production industry. And three, that industry is robust, does very well, and is popular with Indians all over the world. So, most of our filmmakers actually don't even want to think beyond the borders of the Indian, well, I'd say Indians wherever they might live, because there's a very, very, very large diaspora. So Indian cinema does show all over the world, but yeah, they're interested in that audience. And whether it's Hindi, Tamil, Telugu, Malayalam, Bengali, there's audiences for all of us, Bhojpuri, and they're all doing, the good ones, of course, they're all doing very well, and they're very successful. So now, the issue of those few of us who dream of our films showing beyond our diaspora and beyond India, our borders and our diaspora. And this session is really devoted to that, and everybody on the stage has some dream, desire, or part to play in that process. In a very ungentlemanly fashion, let me say Farooq because he's been around the longest in all of us. I mean, he's moved out of India in the 60s and has lived in England and been commissioning editor for international content for the British market. Not for Indians, but for all Brits in England. Lucy's work is amazing. It's been in this part of the world. And the one thing she has specifically is sheer perseverance, I think, and to create great stuff. Vani's done film, acting, and theater has a way of traveling. Anna and I have just been working on a documentary on flamenco, Bharatanatyam, and Kathakali. We believe it's a story that will travel. It's a co-production between India, Spain, and Saudi Arabia. So it has a very wide interest that we have. Tanishta's roles have been in a variety of films. I think I first met Tanishta a very long time ago when she was part of a girl band. And I've seen all her films. We are now working together. And she's directed a film called Rome, Rome Me, which is both the Rome in Italy and the Rome inside us, and which was designed definitely for a world market. So all of us are here, and I'm not going to say much more other than the fact that I believe that there are elements about stories. The stories are all the same. All of us like love, romance, etc. But there's some specific stories that I believe will always have an international appeal. So that's the content. And then there is also the form. So how you tell them. Because if you tell them dancing around trees, etc., or, two birds pecking every time a couple wants to kiss, then that's pure Indian cinema. And then you've got very bold films made out of India also that do travel and are seen worldwide in so many ways. And one of our colleagues who's passed away, Nirmal Pandey, who played a lead in The Bandit Queen, once played a transgender in a film called Darmiyan. The film didn't have enough money to make the cast travel all over. So it was in a film festival in Paris, and nobody knew who this guy was. They didn't even know he was a guy. So the festival gave him the Best Actress award. And we were all shocked to see that a guy received the Best Actress Award. They didn't know better. So if it's things like displacement, romance, very close relationships, issues that affect very tight family units, when transposed, everybody understands them. One of my favorites has been Meera Nair's Monsoon Wedding. Whether it's child abuse, whether it's financial trouble during marriages, whether it's a class difference in relationships, it deals with all of it in a very mature way. And as a result, the film traveled very well. So I'm going to leave it at that, and I'm going to now first go to Lucy, and she's going to tell us what she believes worked for her and what she expects of her movies.
Hello, hello. So wonderful to be here. Thank you so much to everybody. And what a fantastic conversation. Well, my mind is buzzing with lots of things. So a few assorted thoughts, perhaps. I've been lucky enough to make documentary films in my career. And I'm from London in the UK originally. But I've made stories, I've made film documentaries with quite specific stories in Brazil, in Japan, in USA, in so many different places. In Nepal, my most recent film, Mountain Queen, is about a female Sherpa climber, Lakpa Sherpa, who grew up in Nepal and now lives in the US. And that's on Netflix. And that's actually an interesting example because Netflix bought the film after we made it and has distributed it in all around the world, including it was actually the very first Netflix film they ever subtitled into Nepali, which I was really proud that we were kind of breaking those barriers so that it could be seen in Lakpa's home country. And in the specific world of documentary films, actually, I have so many incredible Indian filmmaker friends. And, you know, the last 2 years, there have been Indian films nominated for the Oscar in the Best Documentary Feature category, which is kind of the cream of the documentary awards. And the last 2 years, in particular, Indian filmmakers have been that. And I think it's exciting that the incredibly, you know, talent pool of Indian filmmaking and Indian diaspora filmmakers have been turning their attention to these documentary stories because there are so many stories and so much filmmaking talent. And the world of documentary, I think, has been really embracing these kinds of stories. And I always think, and perhaps others on the panel would have this view, I always think, first of all, with story about a really good beginning, middle, and end, and people that you care about, you know, creatures that you care about, stories that you want to follow because you want to follow the people and find out what's going to happen. And so when I make a film, I always have a question that I have to drop everything to find out what's going to happen. Will they be able to climb the mountain? Will their dream come true? Will they be okay? If they're in danger. You know, these kinds of big burning questions that will take you in. And then I also think about the world. I've always been very curious about the world. And I think as a girl growing up in London, I was just, I didn't have enough money myself to travel the world. And I also didn't think that being on vacation was the most interesting way to see the world. I thought that to meet people and learn about the world, I wanted to travel and work with people and really understand what it was like. And so I feel like I've designed a job making documentary films where I really get to explore the world and tell those stories. So I've been so grateful.
Thanks. You have actually said the magic word, beginning, middle, and end. I mean, everybody sees a film, firstly, to know what's going to happen next. Then comes the art, then comes the emotion, but the first one is that, really. So, one, you've done theater, and you've explored subjects that have especially originated in different parts of the world and been transferred to India. So tell us a little bit about your journey in this space.
Thank you, Bobby sir. And Lucy, I just happened to finish The Mountain Queen just before I came away to the festival. She actually won the biggest prize 3 days ago at New York at one of the biggest film festivals there for being the best foreign language film, and so congratulations. We are the first one to congratulate you post the award because you were on a long flight. There is a very old and a very beautiful saying in Sanskrit called Vasudhaiv Kutumbakam, which means all world is a family. And I think what more than content creation to actually describe this in toto? We are living in a land of storytellers. Every nook and corner of India is storytelling, or as we say in Hindi, kathavachan. We have stories about music, about people, about food, about customs, about language, about many, many things which are intrinsic to our own life. But we also tell stories which come from outside. In the theater, I remember whether it was Anton Chekhov, Three Sisters that I did on stage, or Tennessee Williams, or Arthur Miller, or Peter Sheffer. They were all translated into our own language, Hindi and Hindustani, and we traveled the world to a world where language was not an issue. For example, one of the other things I often wonder about is, what does a foreign language category mean? Why today we are language agnostic and stories communicate? I mean, if this is Nepalese, the whole world saw the story of Lakma Sherpa and what happened in Nepal, the very country which is known for the summit of the Everest. So I think eventually stories travel when they have a universality to it, but they also travel when they have a cultural connect. Few weeks ago, we were in Spain and we were a part of a screenwriters lab. Bobby sir was kind enough to pick little people like me to take to that mentorship lab. But when I look at Spain and India, for example, the cultural connect is so intrinsic, whether it's the values, the way we are brought up, or how important eating together is as a culture. So I think the whole concept of stories not being intrinsic to a geological boundary. We often hear the word cinema without boundaries or theater without boundaries. I think stories are actually those things which have no boundaries. They are the ones who reach out to each other for the love, the emotion, the grief, the sadness, and many, many emotions like the navrasas of life, 9 different emotions. They can be in any language, they can be in any country. But it will be the language of that universality which speaks to each other, whether the form is theater, or it is cinema, or it is pure writing. I think it's sheer gold.
Thanks. Farooq, you've been writing stuff for cinema, and more importantly, you've been writing a lot of novels that sell all over the world. You've done translations of Rumi. It's a very wide audience that you have. What is it that you believe actually is universal about writing?
Vani said the old Sanskrit saying says we are all humanity is one family. I'd rather not belong to the same family as Trump or Netanyahu. But it's true that every culture, every nation, every tribe has its own mythologies. That's where stories start. In India, we have the Ramayana, we have the Mahabharata, and we have stories like the Panchatantra. They're all mythological stories of the ancient times. In Greece, of course, they have the Iliad and the Odyssey. And the mythologies tell us about ethics, about adventure, and about the potential drama between human beings. Now, those were old myths, and every culture has them, but some of them haven't traveled, some of them have because they are very particular, some of them have because they are not very particular to the culture that they are bred from. Then, of course, one has the modern myth. Consider the stories that have traveled from India. The modern myth maker, I think, the best modern myth maker, shall we say, in independent India was Raj Kapoor. And Gandhi, Nehru, the rest of them, they achieved independence. We are an independent India. But Raj Kapoor asked himself, who is independent India? Who the hell are we as Indians? And he made a modern myth. And the modern myth was that होठों पे सच्चाई होती है, दिल में सफाई होती है, हम उस देश के वासी हैं जिस देश में गंगा बहती है. Okay, so there's a religious illusion, but it's an allusion and an illusion, because as we know, the Indian country, होठों पे सच्चाई हमेशा नहीं रहती है, और दिल में सफाई हमेशा नहीं रहती है. His geography was correct. हम उस देश के वासी हैं जिस देश में गंगा बहती है. So geographically he was okay, right? But his films were about how the peasantry, how the poor in the urban fought for an existence, fought for an advancement. The villains are always guys with ties and suits, right? And his heroes are Mera Naam Raju Gherana Naam, Behtiya Ganga Jahan Mera Gaam, a boatman, and a poor boatman. And people identify with that. Now, his films became international in a sense. They traveled, but they didn't travel to America or Europe. He got the most fame in what they call the Soviet Union, and he won prizes there. But he didn't win prizes in St. Petersburg or Moscow. He won prizes in Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, Turkestan, and so on, who could identify that peasantry under the Soviet Union, could identify with exactly he was saying to the Indian population. And the modern myth of India became welcome in the countries, the poorer countries of the Soviet Union. That was, of course, one of the first transferences. The second transference from India of stories that traveled was, shall we say, the artistic films of Satyajit Ray, which went then to universally, they won prizes in Cannes. They might not have been completely popular in, say, New York or San Francisco, but they did win prizes, and they did see the value of it. And the fact of it is that from mythology, the Europeans first converted novels, converted literature devoid of the gods to try and tell the truth. Anna Karenina, Madame Bovary, Jane Austen, George Eliot, Henry James, they converted, they said, no God, let's see what's actually going on between us. So mythology turned to novels, and of course, the primary state that picked up the novels were the Bengalis. And Satyajit, and they took the Bengali novelistic tradition and turned it into a traveling story, and it went there. And the third phase of travels from India were were stories that turned modern reality that could be appreciated anywhere in the world. So think of a film like Slumdog Millionaire, a person who's born in a slum and advances into becoming a millionaire through a modern rubbish television quiz, for God's sake, which makes money. Think of a film like Salam Bombay, which of course went to Cannes, which I incidentally commissioned and edited. It went to Cannes, it went to the Oscars, and it went there because, again, it was the story of poor people in Bombay and in Mumbai, making it in some significant, dramatic way. Think of something like Monsoon Wedding, 3 love stories which come together, unlikely love stories, but they come together and they conquer the obstacles to love. So, Amor vincit omnia, love conquers all. And of course, every human being would understand that. So Salam Bombay also goes there. The film that we wrote together, Bobby Shaker directed it, I wrote the script, was Bandit Queen. Again, that appealed to a very particular rise in the politics of the world, and that is the rise of a low-caste woman fighting for her rights, and it doesn't matter what kind of laws she violates by murdering people, as long as she fights for her rights. And I think women all over the world recognized exactly that. And that was what made that film universal. I am sure there'll be others, and I'm sure people in this audience will write to them. Thank you.
Thank you. Anna, you've done stuff. Your father, Carlos, has done stuff that has traveled very extensively. He's recognized the world over. What is your take on this? What do you really believe that you are doing and that you want to do that is truly international?
First of all, thank you so much for having me here. I'm very happy to be in India again at this amazing film festival at the Film Bazaar. And I'm very happy being here talking about the stories that travel, because we've been working for a year now with you, Bobby, and with Casa de la India in Spain, and also with Valladolid, Country City Hall, about a story that we think it can be a worldwide story, but that it's based, it happened in India, but it's from a character that is from Spain. So me as a producer, I'm always thinking about how to make stories that travel. You know, we live on the internet era. We live on a world where we can share everything through internet. We live on a world we have access to all the content every time in every part of the world. So for me as a young producer, and that have the legacy of my father, that he did many movies that travel all over the world on a different time of the world, no? So it was completely different, because at that time when my father started making movies at the 60s in Spain, they didn't have internet, and they were just a few filmmakers making movies, so they just trying to show their own stories. But at the end of the day, I think the most important thing on that time about our project and my father's movies, and of course all of the movies of the filmmakers of the world that they're traveling, that we know that we've been talking about, that is to find the connection with the audience through the emotions, as Vani said, and that as we've been talking many times now in Spain. And that's what I'm focused on, trying to find the emotion, trying to find that story that it belongs to us as humans. And that's the way that we can tell any story. It can be in India, it can be in Spain, it can be in France, it can be wherever in the world. But the important thing is to find these emotions, is to find these characters that they can tell the story that connects with the audience. And it doesn't matter if it's, in our case, no, we're making a documentary about a Spanish dancer that came to India to find their own artistic way, and to learn about Indian dance. And now, in the present, her daughter is doing the same trip, trying to find her own way. But the important thing here, of course it's India, of course it's Spain, but it's this searching of the identity. And I think this is a story that it can be in all over the world, and that's why this story travel. So that I said, for me, the important thing is that, and I think we have we are very lucky of living nowadays, that we have platforms, that we have many festivals all over the world, that we have many places where we can show our projects, our movies. It doesn't matter if it's a theater movie, a series, a short film, documentary, animation, but I think also as a producer, but also as a filmmakers, that we have the responsibility of take care of our projects. We have the responsibility of promote them very well, to go with the projects where all over the world or wherever we can go, but just always taking care of them and trying to find these stories, these characters, and it doesn't matter if it's the format. It doesn't matter if it's a documentary. Of course, I love documentaries, and that's why we're working on a documentary. But I did many feature films. I did short film series. But to find these emotions, this connection with the audience, and of course, it's not easy, because if it were easy, everyone would do it. So, but this is the challenge, to find these themes that can travel and that can be in any part of the world, and that they can be understood in all over the world. It doesn't matter if it's in Spanish. Of course, in Spain, we are very lucky too, because it's the second language speaking in the world. So we have a huge audience in South America, but also in Europe. But it doesn't matter. You see, nowadays, with the platforms, you can have the subtitles. So it doesn't matter if it's in Spanish, if it's in Hindi, if it's in Nepali, as you told, no? So I think that's why we have to make this effort to find these stories, to work for our projects, and to promote the projects, because it's very, very, very important. And that's why festivals like Goa, like Film Bazaar, they are very important for us, or for me, from the Spanish, from the Europeans, but also from the Indians, or for all the people that will love cinema, because it's the places where we can show the project, we can show the movies, and where we can make these stories travel.
Thanks, thank you. So, Tanishta, I'm going to try to divert your track to one more element of this conversation. So far, we've actually focused on content. You're an actress, so you represent in many ways the form of how stories are told. So do you see, apart from the content, is there a difference in approach, especially between India and the West, as to how you would deal with a story, the same story, if it was made for India and if it is going to be made for the whole world? How would you think is different from the performer's perspective also?
So yeah, from a performance perspective, the difference is very obvious, because our main audience, Indian main audience, is very television friendly. I mean, actually, that is the mass of our audience. And then comes cinema. And cinema here is also like, the theatrical cinema is larger than life, it's song and dance, it's celebration. So it's quite celebratory and loud in its expressions. Whereas, and Indians, as people also, we are loud. So we express ourselves in that manner, and our audiences also relate to those expressions in the manner which really is very obvious and loud in its expression. Whereas in the West, because of climatic and cultural reasons, the way emotions are expressed are more subtle and more inner, and in terms of acting styles, it always changes when we're doing an Indian film, and at times as actors, that's also a challenge, that, this is also real. Like melodrama also can be very real. Like Ritwik Ghatak always made films which had very melodramatic, sentimental, melodramatic expressions, but they hit a very real note, real melodrama. And then there could be fake melodrama as well. And so subtlety can also be fake, melodrama can also be fake, subtlety can be real, and melodrama can be real as well. So that's an obvious distinction. But I think another thing that I would like to say as a performer is that it's about the cultural nuances also that changes, that the way the world perceives certain things about certain stories, like, because we are Indian actors, so we are always cast in films which are sort of culturally specific to India. But a lot of times I have witnessed this, that when I'm working with Western directors or international directors, as an actor I have to tell them that no, but this is not true. It doesn't happen in Indian culture, right? Whether it's a custom, whether it's language, whether it's costume. Sometimes it's a very collaborative sort of experience. Sometimes it is that, no, but do it like that because that's how it's perceived in the world. So these are, whereas, an Indian audience will identify it immediately. But having said all that, there are certain things which are very universal, which I think every one of you have spoken, is emotion. that that is something really, really universal that will always travel. And I also think that films and stories that actually travel are also extremely local. The more specific they are, the more local they are, with a universal theme and universal emotion, that is what actually travels. I mean, we should not try to make it universal. It becomes universal when the theme and the emotion is. Because as an audience, I think we are also trying to learn about the world, like what Lucy was saying, that as a child, as a growing up teenager, she didn't have enough money to travel. So she was also watching things and learning, right? We also learn when I watch your father's films, like all of Blood Wedding, Love the Magician, Carmen. These are universal emotions of love, jealousy, but it's also expressed with a universal language, which is song, dance, culture, aesthetics, which would travel. And it's so culturally specific to Spain, that is flamenco, and that is what I am enamored and I'm looking for. That's not what I get in my films. So I think when we are watching, when we are looking for stories, it also has to be culturally specific. And yeah, that's what I think.
Thanks. There's one other dimension to stories that travel, which is scale. And I specifically bring that onto the table because of a film called Avatar. Avatar starts off as being a very small tribal story sourced out of Orissa and then gets entirely reinterpreted for world mythology. The question is to the panel, and this will be the last one before we open some audience questions. Do you all believe that that is a form of making stories travel, creating the superheroes or the super world out of very local stories? But what Tanisha says about very local is right. I mean, our film Bandit Queen was local even to India. Even the language and dialect was not understood by most of the country. But the film was, because rape and revenge is understood and all of that. But I'm now talking about specifically, and I'm being very sort of selfish in this because right now, A.R. Rahman and I are working on a musical which is based on a poem just on a poem written in India. And we believe that little poem can become an Avatar scale of film just by taking that story out. I will not reveal the name just now, but yeah. I'd like to hear your views on what do you think that Avatar, which is taking a small story and making it into a super story, is something that's going to make it travel. And I'm going to ask anyone who picks up the mic first and thinks they have an answer. Lucy, Farooq, anyone? Yeah, tell me. Lucy picked up the mic first, so you go.
After you, Farooq.
I think that what Tanisha was saying about stories being extremely local and that locality coming through with a universal appeal, a universal theme, is perhaps illustrated by not a film, but a song genre called reggae. Bob Marley's songs are extremely specific to Trench Town, but when he says "no woman, no cry," everybody in the world understands what he's talking about. When he says "get up, stand up for your rights," even somebody like Elon Musk thinks he's standing up for his rights, for God's sake, fighting the unions because I need to be a billionaire. So universally people begin to understand, get up, stand up for your rights. And I have heard in Mumbai, in Bangalore, and now in Goa, reggae playing through. Everybody knows who Bob Marley is. That's a kind of specific place. I mean, I don't know whether Bob Marley knows where Mumbai is, but
Oh, you'll be
his sons are
surprised.
playing here.
Dhanisha Malni came here thinking that dreadlocks were invented on the Ganges, his daughter. Yeah, right. Yeah.
And the other myths that travel through, look at America. America has no old mythology because it doesn't have a history. It's a creation. It's a modern country. But they needed a myth. So what do they create? They create the myth of humans who have mechanical, electronic, and now IT facilities. So Superman can have X-ray, and Captain Marvel can fly. And that's, and even Batman and people, have spider-like qualities. They're taking on the new myth of technology. And that new myth of technology is spreading through American cultural colonialism. And of course, every youth in the world wants to watch, I don't particularly, some new super people on television. I don't even know who they are. But that's the myth that comes through video games where people shoot each other. And that's why every day you hear in America some student has gone and shot 100,000 people. That's the mythology has given the ethics to America.
Please, yeah.
So interesting. I really resonate with all this and this idea that we really care about individuals. A lot of my films, are about ordinary people and who do extraordinary things. But I feel like we can really care about individuals in a way that a big topic isn't a story. Often people approach me and say, this is a very important topic, please make a film about it. And I have made that mistake a couple of times. And it's a very interesting topic, and I'm always grateful to bash my brains against making a film and learn along the way. But I've really learned that if I take a big topic and try to turn it into a film that people want to watch, it is a really uphill battle, because I think stories inherently are narrative, and we care about people and following them, and we can get involved. And I think it's so much easier to care about one person than a whole lot of people. I think there are lots of great quotes. I'm trying to remember the great quote in literature about this, right? But it's easier to care about one person and follow that one individual story than it is, it's a little overwhelming to think about a whole set of problems. But following one person, whether it's in a mythological story, in a documentary, really gets us engaged, and we'll be laughing and crying and following them. And I think also a lot about moral beauty. There's this fantastic science that I've been following about how we really need awe in our world, and how to be blown away, to be inspired by something that is bigger than ourselves is such a powerful human emotion. And I think with the incredible power of cinema, with the big screen story and larger than life experience of seeing a story on a screen, we can really connect with something larger than ourselves. And I think when people sometimes think about awe as an emotion, A-W-E, or sometimes we think about nature, and you may think, you see all the stars, and you think about how small you are. But actually, apparently the number one source of awe is moral beauty and moral courage or compassion, extraordinary feats by ordinary people. And I think that power of story, that we see somebody, whether it's a superhero or a fantastic Bollywood, situation character, or an ordinary person climbing a mountain, really going through something. When we see somebody digging deep and doing something that we don't think we could personally be capable of, but somehow they find the courage or the compassion or the kindness or the brilliance to be that, awe-inspiring. I think these stories really blow us away and have a real power to them. And I think that's something as well that unites stories that travel and that really connects us with a very, very fantastic human emotion that actually apparently also is like the cure for what the world needs in terms of bringing us together and bringing out the very best of humanity.
Yes.
I just
Anna?
wanted to add to the Avatar bit that you spoke about.
Yeah, okay.
One of the films we've forgotten to mention is Gandhi. You know, and when Attenborough was making Gandhi, there was so much conversation whether Gandhi should be Indian, should be an Indian character, Indian actor playing the character. But when you look at Ben Kingsley, you do not really figure out, you know, it is the character. And more than that, if we were to look at the fable part of Gandhi, and if people would have not seen Gandhi, they would have thought he was a huge man who had a lot of superpowers, and he made the British go down, and that is how Indian independence happened. But when physically you actually get to see the figure, it's a small, tiny man with a very weak voice, and the strength of a Hercules to actually propel the independence movement. So I think stories and superheroes also cannot be defined in as just few letters. Superheroes are not just huge, big people, who look like very mighty and, cannot be broken into. They are also people, as Lucy said, small, very local, people with great courage who actually, rise up to an occasion, and that courage, becomes universal.
Thanks. So now 2 last words. First Anna and then Tanishta.
No, just to answering your question, I think that there is no formula about to find this story that travel. Of course, we can talk about many different things that can be part of the stories that travel, but then at the end of the day, when you make a movie, you can have a great script and then an amazing crew, a wonderful movie, and then something happened, and the movie, it doesn't travel. We don't know why, because maybe it's not the moment, maybe there's another movie that they invest more money on P&A, maybe you didn't go to the right festival, maybe there are many, many things that can happen, no? But then on the other hand, there are other movies that you make with the same love, with the same passion, with the same ingredients, and then suddenly something happens, something magic, and travel all over the world. Maybe it can be a very, 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 very small story, very local, without even a big budget of P&A, and something happened, something magic, and this is part of the magic of the cinema, no? But then also, that happened not that much times, but it can happen, and I think that that's what we have to fight for, and of course we have to find these emotions, these characters, but I think we have to make the movies that we love it, as you said, with the topics that we like, that we think that we can defend, that we can promote, that we can take care of, and do the best movies as we think and that we want. But there is no formula, no? That's the thing. There is no formula.
We are not in the business of formulas.
No, we're not. That's very
And
important.
those things so fail.
Yeah.
Tanishta.
Yeah, I think, I would just extend that like, and what Vani also said, that, yeah, stories that travel also have original thought. Like Gandhi was a thought. Like he brought in an original thought that the world at that point in history resonated with. So what Anna is also saying, that sometimes you can have all the tick marks that, I choose, but there is no formula, because it's also about that time and space. And what the global audiences, the same film which was made 50 years back might not resonate now, because our history and our political history and concerns and the way we live and what affects us has also changed. So it's also about like that space and time. And that's why I think, yeah, there is no formula. It is not that this glass has worked. So you keep repeating, it's not a factory. Every story is different, and every story has its own journey.
So we're going to have a few minutes of Q&A. Before that, I'm just going to give you one small story that emanates from something that Lucy said. I was with Gareth Wigan, who's passed away now. He was the president of Colombia, and a Brit who'd been living in Los Angeles for 40, 50 years. And so we went to him with a script about Buddha. And he said, it's an absolutely wonderful subject. I have seen 18 scripts on Buddha. They have all failed me. And I have now begun to believe that there is no film. Buddha is a great topic, but there is maybe there's no film there. So I haven't seen one. And then he gave me an example, which actually illustrates what everybody said just now. And it's to do with the form. He says, when somebody comes to you and says, I want to do a film, and you're sitting in Los Angeles, and he says, I want to do a period film set in the Middle East, a period about a British Army officer. And you tell him, please don't waste my time. Because sitting in Los Angeles, you don't know where the British, you don't know where the Middle East is. And sorry, who are the Brits? What is the British Army? Don't waste my time. And he says, you read my script, please. And he says, that's how Lawrence of Arabia got made. You know, it's actually ultimately the small personal conflict and drama about the script and the 100 pages that worked and traveled, and boy, did it travel. I mean, it's still an epic. So thanks. Now we have a few minutes for questions. So first at the back there, yeah?
Hi, Bobby. My name is Ranjit, and this question to you, actually. How important is the star cast in the stories that travel? You have launched Shah Rukh Khan. You worked with Amir as well. So how important is actually a global star who's already known across the world for the stories that you craft?
So when I first worked with Shah Rukh, he didn't exist as an actor. It was his first film, so he was not a star. He was a first-time actor. With Amir, it was a huge film, and it was not my most successful film. So that, in a sense, should tell you that it is irrelevant. All you need in a film to make it successful is a peg to hang it on. If you are bereft of every other peg, if your title, your story, your subject, your promotion, your visuals are not up to the mark, then you spend 100 crores on a star. 100 crores is like $1 billion, you know, right? On a star, in the hope that his fan club will see your film. But no, you have seen Bandit Queen. It had not one known actor at that time, they were all new. You've seen Maqbool, all reasonably well known, but no stars. But what a cast. Even a television series that I did called Rajdhani, everyone became a star later. There was nobody. So my answer is very clear. You write something, the character fits in the role, you cast him. And you find another peg to hang on, rather than spend those millions on just to find that peg in a name. Yeah, there's a question here? Right here, yeah.
Hi, Bobby, and good afternoon to all the speakers. So my question is about, as the topic says, stories that travel, right? So as a film reviewer, I've seen some of the movies which get shot in one language and then it literally travels. Instead, there are some films where they shoot in a language, dub it in different languages, or make it multilingual, try to make it travel, but it does not. But bringing to the example of Kantara, which was a super duper hit and which traveled all over the world with the divine power of God or whatever it is, the culture within it. The place it was shot is just 300 kilometers from Goa in Kundapur. So now coming to these divine stories, I want to hear it from the delegates from abroad. What do you think would be the reason for such movies to travel every loop and corner of this world and actually touch human emotions and become a hit? And what do you think is your advice to the aspiring directors who just want to make a film and later probably release it in all languages? Instead, I believe releasing it in one language and the film's content reaching people is, and then it becoming multilingual is more important. What's your perspective on that?
I'll pass it to the panel, but quickly, just my take on it is very relevant because I tried this, right? If it is culturally acceptable, that works. If transfer of cultures makes a difference, then a simple story that everybody understands, that the relationship between a man and a woman from I could wait for you for 10 hours for these 5 minutes with you. And may I open the car door for you? And then suddenly that relationship changes to, I've been waiting for 10 minutes. This is only buying vegetables for you, you know? Or where's my paper, where's my coffee? All that's happened is that they've got married and the relationship has changed, right? Now, I haven't given you the names, now I'll give you the names. I took Ale Paide and converted it into Satya. That conversion was important because it had to be culturally set. And if I said that in Mexico, in Spain, in Saudi Arabia, anywhere, it would have to be culturally relevant for them to accept it, their people. But the other films where what you're saying is absolutely right, you just put subtitles and they work. Sorry, anybody, Farooq?
Think of the cultural specificity of certain things that succeed in certain places. For example, a very hugely successful serial in India was called Kyunki Saas Bhi Kabhi Bahu Thi. And that didn't travel. It won't travel because for billions of Indian women, the fate of being a woman is to be educated into first being a bahu and then being a saas. That is the destiny, by and large, of women. I know that women want to oppose that and fight it now, and I don't allude to the Indian women in the audience or on the platform, but by and large, a woman is brought up to be a saas, to be a bahu, and then, of course, graduating to being a saas. And then, because of the joint family institution, the drama arises between the daughter-in-law and the mother-in-law. Now, in Western country, where people pair off through, not through arranged marriages, but through love marriage, the same conditions don't apply. And so that culture, that Saas Bhi Kabhi Bahu Thi, can't translate into an American series, right? People sometimes think that American series can translate into Indian. I used to work for a platform called MX Player, and I've seen so many people sending me scripts attempting to do a game of clones, you know, and it absolutely doesn't work. And so one refused those. It didn't
but you know, Saas Bhi Kabhi Bahu Thi has worked internationally.
Which one?
Saas Bhi Kabhi Bahu Thi. I saw it has been transferred. There's a film called The Adventurers, made before this series, where the rebels, where the dictator says, I'm living in this palace, and the rebels say, we will get you out of this palace and we'll make it into a hospital. And when the rebels win, the youngest rebel, who's the leader,
Bobby, you have a very broad interpretation of story.
right? The youngest rebel says, you know, now we'll make this to a hospital. So the rebel leader says, what nonsense, that's my house. So he becomes a saas in no time at all. Yeah. Sorry.
Lucy, do you think stories travel, or is it the language which makes it travel?
No, so stories travel. They're language agnostic.
Indian American. I spent my formative year here, and I made a film. And I like to use cinema as a medium to tell a story. So I picked up a story which had already traveled. It was a viral story, and I picked up that story because it not only it traveled well as a viral story, but it was the story of an Indian American boy. So I wanted to tell my story to the world also as an Indian American. It is traveling very well in film festival. As a matter of fact, yesterday we screened it here, and it did very, very well. But the problem is, and my question comes now, that how do you distribute? Because I was at American Film Market, and people are dropping my leaflet like a hot potato. And then I asked them that why you are not even looking into my film? And they told me that because even if with the one brown character as a lead, it doesn't work for us. And you have two brown characters as a lead, so it is not going to work. and I'm having a difficult time finding a distributor. Netflix is not touching it, Amazon is not touching it, American film market, no one wants to like it. Then there are some distributor who wants this free of charge, but that is the problem. So my question is that to the successful filmmakers, that how do you distribute such a film?
See, you have to think of that before you roll the camera. Which is the peg you're going to hang on? I mean, I'm sure all the filmmakers here may argue with me. Anna won't, she's a producer. But how you're going to sell your film, whether it is a film or Coca-Cola or shampoo, until you know who wants it and how you're going to sell it, you should not make it. And that's the reason why thousands of films do not get sold. If there is no market for it, then they are not going to buy it. Having said that, I mean, if you go far back into time, what is the Jungle Book? It's a film about a small brown boy. And boy, did it not work, but he created Disney. So there are ways of interpreting it also, you know.
Yeah, no, I did my homework, Bobby, and the thing is, it's an emotional story, emotion sells. It's a family story, family sells.
No, but you have to have a peg.
Story.
No, you have to have a peg to hang it on. That's all in your head. What's your plan? Which is better to go to Netflix beforehand. And then they will tell you, and then you may not make it.
Yeah, they told me that, change this girl to a white girl. They told me that. And that was not an authentic story, right? Real story. We want to tell a brown people's story. And
opportune if you meet after this session, and the conversation can happen.
Question back there, please.
We'll do that. Thank you.
Right.
And we are anyway out of time.
Hi everyone, I'm Gautam from Chennai. I'm an aspiring filmmaker. So my question is we are talking about stories that travel. So in past 10 years, I'm seeing a lot of false stories that travel and being appreciated all over the world. And they're being shown in such film, like the film festivals as well as Indian films. So I see it's utter like fake stories and without any context of truth. So how we are going to deal with it? That's my question.
Examples?
I don't know what your question is, because all stories are fake, aren't they? That's why they're called stories. I mean, we are, I mean, except for her, and what Anna and I are just doing, we are in the business of fiction.
So I'm not talking about
that
fiction.
is fake.
It is sold as fact. That's what I'm asking.
No. That you.
You want to say that there are films which start with based on true events?
Yeah, they say.
So yeah. This is a very pertinent question, and it gets asked a lot of times, because I also sit on the Popularly Unpopular Censor Board of India, and when we are looking at a film, we actually look for documentation where the true facts were, But remember that there's a lot of research which goes into telling stories, and it's not upon the filmmaker to actually defend himself to the world and say that this is the research I did and publish it as a PhD thesis. If it is all storytelling, it will have a figment of imagination, but will have realism too. It just depends whether the story reaches out to you or not. And that should be the larger issue or the larger question to be asked. At the end of the day, if everything was real, you will say, this is my life, why will I go to the theater and watch it? Or if everything was just so fantabulous, you will say that this is all nonsense. So obviously there is a matchmaking of realism and fantasy, and that is how stories get told. Otherwise, how else will they happen?
It also is like the storyteller's perspective always comes in. Like even in documentary, I also believe that documentary is also nothing is real, because it is still a perspective. The moment you're framing something and saying, I'm not showing this and I'm showing this, you've decided. So there is always a storyteller's perspective. So nothing is real, everything is perception.
Lucy, you had something to say on that?
Oh, yeah, I think this is all so interesting. I've been thinking about how, there are some genres that we're used to, like musicals or documentaries or dramas. And I think those travel a little bit less well or a little bit more culturally specific. The classic Bollywood musical, for example, is a little hard to get into or get obsessed with if you don't sort of, if you haven't, if you're not already in that tradition. So I think genres travel a little bit less, unless they're like, kind of, if you can do something that's a little bit close to what people are used to, they'll do it. There's actually a science of creativity that says the ideal percentage of newness, novelty, is 18% or something. And so, if we hear, even take it, maybe music is a good example. If you hear a pop song that is like 18% different than your favorite pop song, you'll love it. But if it's like 50% different, it will sound experimental and terrible and not even like music, So we like things that are a little bit new because we don't want to, watch the exact same thing we just watched. We like the surprise. But we don't want to have something too new. So I think with genres, it's a little bit difficult to jump into something that you've never seen anything like that before and understand it. But for stories, I think we love something different. When I watched Bandit Queen and I fell in love with it, I felt like I had never seen that story before. And it felt totally different and fresh. And that's what's good about it. I once had a boss that was working in Hollywood, and they said they were very excited. It was the year after Slumdog Millionaire. And they got a pitch, and they said, it's exactly like Slumdog Millionaire, but with a different quiz show. And I laughed, and I thought, well, Slumdog Millionaire is the big movie this year, but you want to try and repeat it with a different quiz show next year, people are going to say, just we saw that already, And so you kind of want to be a little bit fresher with the stories, and I think that's what's exciting about, for example, all the Indian filmmakers here. There are stories here that the world has not seen before, and that people are so excited to see. And I think there's a real opportunity for these stories to travel. But if you want to make them in the form of a Bollywood musical, for example, that may be a little bit harder until audiences are more familiar with that kind of storytelling. But within the kinds of storytelling that an audience is used to culturally, then I think people are hungry to see something they haven't seen before, and to enter a world and meet people and see different kinds of stories that are really, really surprising and fresh, and a new place, a new thing. We love that. But not if it's a different kind of a thing. It's just hard for people to even follow, even get into it, right?
Yeah, thanks. I think I've got several warnings. We're seriously out of time. Your very quick point to make?
One word. On the last question about reality, just think Delhi crimes traveled all over the world. That series about the rape.
Right.
And to the previous questioner about distributors and your American Indian film, never mistake a distributor for a critic. They are capitalists.
Thank you so much, everybody. And we all take lessons from today. Tanisha, 18% difference is our lesson from today. She's given us a percentage.
That's how much you're allowed.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you so much. Can we please have a big round of applause for this panel for coming together and sharing their insights with us. We thank you. We thank you, audience, for being with us. Due to the limit of time, this session has come to an end, but we surely want to see you for the next one. Thank you and have a great day.